two massacred ENDF members by TPLF on November 3. Somalia's president appeals for international support for wounded victims. Good evening to you all. A very warm welcome to ETV News. I am Grum Tariku. The Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia Government Communication Service announced that Ethiopians across the nation are set to pay homage to the massacred ENDF Northern Command members by the treacherous TPLF on November 3 with the theme "We will never forget the day." The Government Communication Service recalled that a large number of members of the National Defense Forces who were guarding the Tigray region were massacred by the terrorist TPLF on November 3. This barbaric act will always be remembered as a crime of treason that will never be forgotten in the nation's history. In a later development, the Association for Peace and Unity in Ethiopia announced that diaspora in the USA said to stage a rally protesting foreign interference and to commemorate the second anniversary of the massacre by the terrorist TPLF on ENDF Northern Command. Demonstrators are scheduled to start their rally at the U.S. State Department and head to the Capitol Hill. In another development, the Biden administration and some Western countries continued their diplomatic pressure to twist the hands of Ethiopian government under the guise of human rights and humanitarian aid. Ethiopian permanent representative to the United Nations, Taye Hatzqeslasse, said Ethiopia never accepts some Western's illusionist peace call and warnings.
Some members are calling for the referral of Ethiopia to other UN mechanisms. I have a strong reason that the die is cast, as they say. There is already a predetermined action that is on the making. There is a strong reason to suspect that. But having said that, unfortunately for us, trust has died. Mistrust is blossoming right and left. What we heard is not a message of peace, it's a message of warning, one after the other. But I would like to remind member states that the country that has passed through many ebbs and webs of politics, as a proud African country that has withstood many challenges in the past, will definitely overcome the challenges that we are facing today.
Ambassador Taye further reassured that Ethiopia has a strong soul to solve challenges and ensure peace in the country.
We might look powerless in the face of a block of countries, which we have faced it during the Second World War. But I want to assure you, Mr. Chair, the spirit of our soul is strong. That soul is not only to stand to be an Ethiopian, but also to bring peace and as well as resolve our challenges.
He also made it clear that Ethiopia is committed to bring perpetrators of human rights violations to justice, but the fate of over 100 million people will not be determined by few politically motivated groups.
We cannot let the fate of 120 million people into a handful of experts. But having said that, we will always welcome well-meaning actors, but not those who already made the decision to condemn and censor and put us to death. I would say, forgive them, they know not what they do. Therefore, the government, I can assure that all perpetrators of human rights violation will be accountable. We have to do it for our own, not to please some organization or experts. We know that lasting peace can only be achieved with justice and accountability for the crimes committed in all regions. But that has to be country-owned. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
መንገድ ያሳያቸው ወይም ጥቃቱ እንዲፈጸም ያደረገው ኮሎኔል ገብረስላሴ ነው። መሳሪያው ግምጃ ቤት እንዲገባ አደረገ። እኛ ባዶ እጃችን እንድንሆን አደረገ። ከዚህ በላይ እንግዲህ ምን ማድረግ አይቻልም። ወታደሩ ነው ባዶ እጅህን ያው መማረክ ማለት እኮ
ዲሞቢላይዝ ወይም ደግሞ ዲስቴብላይዝ በማድረግ የተደረገ እንቅስቃሴ ነው። በጣም ፈጣን የሆነ እርምጃ ነው የተወሰደው። በኦልሞስት በ45 ደቂቃ ውስጥ እዙን በሙሉ ለመቆጣጠር የተቻለበት ነው። አንዳንድ ፖኬቶች ላይ ከቀሩት ውጪ
We don't know. Our commanders, they are in jail. We don't know. Maybe they are not alive till now. That is what they paid for us.
Despite Ethiopia's relentless efforts to find peaceful remedy to the war in the north, while at the same time protecting its territorial integrity and its airspace from enemies under external pressure keeps mounting. Talking to ETV, a legal expert said some corners in the international community had allied with destabilizers at the home front, threatening the peace and stability of the country. Johannes van Town has the following account.
The legal expert told ETV that the mounting pressures are a sign of the creation of a government that is conducive to Western ideas, serving as puppets, saying that this government has emerged as a model beyond East Ethiopia and has brought about a radical change in the West. The expert said the West is putting undue pressure on Ethiopia, realizing that a government capable of resorting the greatness of Ethiopia has been created.
This is one of the situations whereby we can see the relationship between the southerns and the north at the globe level in general, because as everybody knows, we southerns do have our own aims, goals, customs, and our own style of performing activities. Even we do have our own concepts, but despite that, those some northerns impact, it is not the whole world, by the way. It is only some of the Western countries who are not, who do not cooperate, who do want to cooperate with the Ethiopians. Otherwise, we do have number of Western countries. We do have number of developed countries who stood besides Ethiopian side. So what I would like to say is that I think it is due to the difference between the conceptualization of democracy, conceptualization of the good government and so on, which is the result of history between the northern and those southern. Therefore, Ethiopia has its own conception. Ethiopia has wants to promote its own ideas, but those some Westerners want to impose their pressure.
Despite Addis Ababa expressing willingness to negotiate anywhere and anytime with the TPLF unconditionally, some members of the international community have left no stone unturned to portray the government as having placed a siege on Tigray, a lie it has been consistently spreading.
The intervention, according to the UN Charter and some other international laws, is allowed if and only if there are grave situations so as to ensure the promotion and protection of human rights. But here, as everybody knows, the Ethiopian government is not violating human rights, which invites the international community, because the Ethiopian government is trying its best level so as to solve the problems and so as to ensure the human rights of individuals and groups in general. Therefore, I think again it is a matter of promoting their agenda and their interest as well.
Even though the country has reached its current level while coping with the pressures, Ethiopia must continue to inform the world of its truth so that further pressures can be reduced, the scholar added.
The solution would be diplomacy, a diplomatic relationship, because you see, Ethiopia should continue working on its diplomacy so that it would be possible to sell our ideas to show that Ethiopia is working properly at the national level and so on, and Ethiopia is working, trying to ensure peace and order at home, so that this peace and order could also contribute for the peace and order at the international level as well. So that I think I can say that we should work more on that.
Ethiopia was forced to send troops to the mountains of Tigray up north in early November after the TPLF's special forces brazenly assaulted unarmed members of the Northern Command of the Ethiopian Defense Forces committing treason.
Pan-Africanism based on scientific socialism simply means we do not want to use the options of the West of capital.
Africans themselves are getting their stories wrong about each other, right? Because they're listening to much of their stories and their neighbors' stories through these mainstream media outlets, through so-called international human rights organizations like Amnesty and Human Rights Watch, which is just an arm of the colonial project. They come in and they pretend like they're the ones who care more about you than your neighbor does, but what they're trying to do is create rifts.
However, now, as a Pan-Africanist, I tell you that I relish the opportunity and the chance to live in any one of these hellholes within the continent. You see, I understand and accept the challenge of uniting Africans and making it the next big thing, not only as a Pan-Africanist, but as a youth as well.
Welcome back, and you are watching ETV News. In its third day, the first of its kind, African Youth Summit in Addis Ababa has been accompanied by visits to major development undertakings here in Addis Ababa, the newly emerging parks, the Science Museum, the Green Legacy Initiative, industrial parks, and many more are lively testimonies that this government is really pursuing transformation in the country. How about the reflections of the participants, the first African Youth Summit? Habtam Shagri has talked to them, and let's have a look.
Ethiopia invites its prospect African youth leaders to discuss continental matters as well as to visit mega projects across the country. Talking to ETV English, they said that Ethiopia is the right track to transform the nation, as well as the role example of other African countries, elevating backwardness, poverty, as well as continental problems.
In aerospace master's student, I designed.
The feeling is great, man. We are inspired. If I have to mention a few things, let me start with the hospitality is African. We feel at home in the land of origin, of course. And then the second thing is the leadership. The leadership of the Ethiopian people or Ethiopian government is spot on. It bridges the old generation to the young generation. Most of the leaders, from ministers to prime minister, I think it's people who are bridging the distance between the youth and then previous leadership, which is really good to us. And then the third thing is the capacity that Ethiopian people have and the belief in what they do is spot on. We are really inspired, and we hope it's replicated in the whole of Africa. Then we can become one.
I feel so proud of myself being an African after visiting all these places and seeing that Africa, Ethiopia, it's part of Africa. Ethiopia is having all these machines. Ethiopia is having the technology. Ethiopia is having the civilization. Ethiopia is having the intelligence to come up with all these innovative ideas. I am so proud. And the other thing is that I'm seeing the gender balance in the area of works that I went to today, because we visited the armed forces. I am so proud seeing the advanced technology that is in Ethiopia here, seeing also the level of women that are working in the senior positions in Ethiopia, seeing ladies working on aeroplane parts to fix, because I had that and understand today that Ethiopia don't import anything about parts, about aeroplane, but everything is being made here. So I am so proud being an African today, to be honest.
We are so impressed. We visited the African Union, we visited the Air Force, we visited the police, the federal police place. It's amazing, we are so impressed. And now we are in the Center of Science. We are so impressed. Really, Ethiopia is a very great country.
Well, you know, Ethiopia being the country of diplomacy and also such a historical country, I mean, the feeling is good. I feel home. Because to me, Ethiopia is like coming back home somehow, you know, regarding all the history, and it's a very hostile country. I mean, I just feel so welcome, and this is very positive. As a youth, knowing that we will have to work with the whole African countries and try to unify into one, well, everywhere we go in Africa, we need to feel home, and that's the feeling that I have right now.
It was exactly on this day, October 31st, 1930, that Emperor Haile Selassie, the last monarch of Ethiopia, was coronated. The longest reigning monarch, who was also regarded as untouchable all through 1930 to 1974, Haile Selassie stayed on the throne except for a brief interlude of exile during the 5-year Italian invasion. Having a particular knack for modernization, Haile Selassie was busy importing technologies to Ethiopia. In the following piece, our staff reporter Shagawi Mata will take a closer look at his life.
Emperor Haile Selassie was born at a place called Ijersa Agoro, Harar province of eastern Ethiopia, from his father Ras Mekonnen and his mother Eshimmavet on July 23, 1892. When Haile Selassie was 13 on November 1, 1905, his father bestowed on him the title of the Jazmach, the second highest rank after Ras, and appointed him governor of the region of Gara Muleta in the province of Harar. He was also appointed governor of Sidamo in the south, and he administered the region in person. Minilik's second daughter, Zauditu, became empress, and Haile Selassie was named regent and heir apparent to the throne. After the death of Empress Zauditu, Haile Selassie was crowned this week on 2nd November 1930 at Addis Ababa's Cathedral of St. George in the attendance of royals and dignitaries from all over the world. Emperor Haile Selassie ratified the first modern constitution of the Ethiopian Empire in 1931 to officially replace the Fetha Negest. Emperor Haile Selassie I was known for modernizing Ethiopia and importing technologies and reforms to the country from abroad. Unwavering in his patriotism, he went right ahead in opposing the Italian occupation, making a historic speech at the League of Nations in his native Amharic.
So in an unprecedented scene, Haile Selassie stands in dignified silence, waiting for the uproar created by Italian journalists to cease. Then, speaking in his native tongue, he makes his dramatic appeal.
In the post-1941 period, the emperor placed emphasis on modern education and strengthening the central government. The emperor was also known for helping establish the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, back in 1963. Son of Emperor Haile Selassie reflected on the monarch's sense of Pan-Africanism.
Ethiopia sacrificed a lot for the Pan-Africanist movement. I think the Battle of Adwa was a pivotal moment, and the emperor continued to build on that legacy. And Ethiopia sacrificed a lot to get African countries their independence. It supported people like Mandela, Nkrumah in Zimbabwe, and everywhere on the continent. So he leaves a big legacy. But I think it's not just him. He had capable people around him. And of course Ethiopia paid the price for it too.
With the Wollo famine of 1973 and the sharp rise in gasoline price in the CME serving as immediate causes, Haile Selassie was deposed after a group of soldiers from the army barrack asked him to step down. On that historic day of September 12, 1974, the soldiers, calling themselves Derg, hauled him off to a separate room still within the palace as the student movement reached its height.
Ethiopian Emmy Award-winning producer and journalist Hadram Ahmed told ETV that refuting fake narratives on Africa can be achieved by the continent's journalists. This can be realized through winning the trust of journalist community through reporting maladministration and flowering success being balanced, she noted. Tigusarisa has the following account.
The first Ethiopian Emmy Award-winning producer and journalist Hadra Ahmed sat with ETV and noted that refuting fake news on Africa can be achieved by the continent's journalists. It means through winning the trust of journalist community through reporting maladministration and flowering success being balanced, she noted.
A lot of misunderstanding when it comes to local journalists and international media outlets. One of the things is somehow, more or less, not all of them, but some of them believe that if you're a local journalist, you will only be writing the flowery things about the continent. You know, the continent is still ravaged by corruption, unemployment, lack of health facilities, lack of women equality. All of that is an issue within the country. But if we're able to tell those stories, if we manage to also cover those stories, not neglecting those stories, it would also mean that we're also telling the good stories at the same time, because we would be able to create a relationship and a trust between the journalist communities all over the country, all over the continent.
She also underscored that journalists across the African continent should share knowledge and experience within, rather than solely depending on the expertise of the bigger media houses.
We don't also have that culture of working within the continent, with journalists within the continent.
Right.
How many, like, even in Ethiopia, if you've seen, if there is any journalism training, any kind of support, it's usually from either Al Jazeera or the BBC or any other international media outlets. And so we're sort of lean towards this organization to show us the ropes. Yes, of course, they have the experience, years of, you know, something that we can pick up on from them. But it's also important to create that intercontinental journalist collaborations, work with a journalist from Ethiopia, with Kenya, or with South Africa, or with other African countries that we have similarities with, because we do have a lot of similarities.
Hadra expressed that to strengthen Pan-Africanism and regional integration, journalists from the entire continent should learn from one another and go out of their comfort zone to best experience others' cultural values.
So as journalists, what we can do, as Ethiopian journalists especially, is to look at other African countries' experiences and how other journalists in these different parts of Africa, how do they report their stories? And so as Ethiopian journalists, we should be able to go out of the Addis, we should be able to explore all parts of the country. We have over 80 ethnic groups and, you know, over 100 languages and dialects, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story to tell. And then we pick that up and then collaborate that with a journalist from other African countries. Not just invite African journalists to Ethiopia to report on, you know, when something political is happening or some big event is happening, but actually to invite them.
Currently, there is a move by Africans to have a giant common media institution to share information and to promote Africa to the whole world.
Somalian president has issued an urgent plea for international help for wounded victims of devastating car bombings at the weekend that claimed the lives of 100 people. The government put out an appeal for blood donations, with dozens of people gathered outside hospitals in the capital Mogadishu seeking news of family members. In Mogadishu on Saturday, 2 cars packed with explosives blew up minutes apart near the busy Zombe intersection, followed by gunfire in an attack targeting Somalia's education ministry. Bulldozers were continuing to clear the blast site in the capital Mogadishu on Monday in the hunt for bodies feared trapped under the rubbles. And finally, in half an hour address broadcast on Sunday, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo addressed the nation to explain the raft of measures his government will be taking to see its way out of financial turmoil, including measures to support domestic production. Shagayamata has more from Africa News.
Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo addressed the nation to explain a 30% cut in budgeted discretionary expenditures and salaries of the President, Vice President, Ministers, Deputy Ministers and political office holders. He indicated his country is in a crisis. He didn't exaggerate when he said so.
We are in a crisis. I do not exaggerate when I say so. I cannot find an example in history when so many malevolent forces have come together at the same time. But, as we have shown in other circumstances, we should turn this crisis into an opportunity to resolve not just the short-term urgent problems, but the long-term structural problems that continue to bedevil our economy.
The rise of COVID-19 pandemic ushered an era of disillusionment. Growth slowed and money borrowed in the markets became increasingly high in price.
We've gone to the fund to repair in the short term our public finances and restore our balance of payments, whilst we continue to work on the medium to long-term structural changes that are at the heart of our goal of constructing a resilient, robust Ghanaian economy and building a Ghana beyond aid.
These difficulties were exacerbated by the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on food and energy prices worldwide. Inflation in the country is rising to over 30%, while the currency is depreciating at an unforeseen pace. Since the beginning of the year, the cedi has lost over 40% against the dollar.
Over now to a quick reminder of the headlines. Ethiopians to pay homage to massacred ANDF members by TPLF on November 3. Somalia's president appeals for international support for wounded victims. Well, you have been watching ETV News. Thanks for your company and have a great time.